Hello everyone, and we read today some very powerful ideas about the Midbar. The Midbar is referred to as the desert. And why is the desert such a powerful place for us to be able to experience our relationship with Hashem? I once got lost in the desert in a place called Mitzpeh Rimon in Israel, and I was there with 2 or 3 Americans. I'm not sure which was more dangerous, being lost in the desert or the Americans, but I survived, Baruch Hashem. After about 8 hours of being lost in the desert, we finally found our way to a Bedouin camp in the middle of the desert, and they saved us, Baruch Hashem. That week, we read about 4 yeshiva bochrim dying, being lost in the desert from dehydration. So crazy, but thank God we were alive. But the desert is a very, very powerful place and very spiritual place, and we're going to learn about why. So he says, Masha kiblu es ha-Torah b'Midbar, and not only is it a powerful spiritual place, but the Torah was particularly given in the desert. You know, there's many places that Hashem could have orchestrated this retreat. You know, you go on a retreat where you want to learn some Torah and you want to connect spiritually and do some yoga. You know, you find somewhere comfortable with some trees, maybe a nice river, you know, a stream, maybe some cows. You know, why, out of all places, the desert? You know, surely Hashem could have orchestrated some other type of environment to be able to give the Torah, like the fields of Durban, or, you know, the nice Lion's Head of Cape Town. Imagine Hashem gave the Torah in Cape Town, on Lion's Head. I mean, I could see that. That's a very, very, very plausible and potential avenue. Now, the question is, out of all places, Hashem gave it not in Cape Town, in the desert. So he says like this: Ki b'lo ha-Torah nechshav kol ha'olam hefker k'midbar. Hashem wanted to juxtapose the reality that without Torah, the whole world is nothing like a desert. Meaning, we know in a desert is hefker. Nothing really lives apart from the Bedouins in the desert. Nothing really is able to inhabit that space. And what he's saying here is there is an ownerlessness. There is a space of inability to inhabit the world without the Torah. Not only is it uninhabitable, but what the uninhabitable energy of not having Torah in the world is the following concept: everything has dominion over you. That's what it means. In the desert, you find something, it's yours. Because whoever lost something in the desert, you know, they're either dead or, you know, there's some alien entity, whatever it may be. The desert is a place that is hefker. You can pick up a rock there, it belongs to no one. The desert is hefker, belongs to no one. And because of this, he wants to say, if you don't have the Torah, you fall into a category called everything has dominion over you. You are able to be influenced left, right, and center. Oh, wow, I feel like eating that. Oh, I feel like buying that. Oh, I feel like drawing myself after that individual. Oh, I feel like being influenced by this. You become like an ownerless piece of nothing. Because in one's inability to say no, in one's inability to say, I will not allow you to have dominion over me, you become like a desert. You become this entity that everything is able to trample on. And you know who allows them to trample on? You allow them to trample on by virtue of not having Torah in your life. Ki b'emes, hen b'klaliyas ha'olam koydem Kabbalas Torah, v'hen b'chol ha'adam b'pratiyas, kol zman she'ein noheg b'shura chas v'shalom, v'einem kayim es ha'Torah chas v'shalom azai ha'olam v'adam, hen b'chinas hefker. You say something is hefker. You know what hefker means? Hefker, again, is if you have an object and you just say, hefker, doesn't belong to anyone. Anyone can grab this, anyone can take this. In Australia, I was able to find a lot of cool things on the street because people just chuck things out, put it on the street. I found one of those garden blowers. I found a Dyson vacuum. I found a squash racket. Unbelievable thing. You don't have to go shopping, Clive. You just walk on the streets in Australia, the land of milk.
Those are all the things I've chucked out.
The land of off milk and poisonous honey. Yes, sorry, what was that, Clive?
Those are all the things I threw out when I left Australia.
Yes. Thank you, Clive, for all of that. So the same too as a person becomes hefker. You don't want to be hefker. People think being hefker means that they're free. I can do whatever I want. No, if you can do whatever you want, and you're a person that has no discipline and dominion over yourself, you are almost like a nothing. You are worthless, valueless.
You're describing Americans now.
Thank you for that, Clive. It's very kind of you. Clive. Sometimes they merge together, the entities. Not sure why. You see, what is an entity that is hefker? An entity that is hefker is essentially something you've said, I have no purpose for this anymore. Ois, get out of my life. No purpose for you anymore. So get out. And you chuck it out. That's something that's hefker. I have no need for this anymore. No purpose. An individual who lives life with no purpose. And purpose by definition means that you have structure to this entity. Because if an entity doesn't have purpose, there's no particular structure to that entity. Structure by definition allows an individual to define themselves as having purpose. Now, not false structure. I'm not talking about randomized structure, where a person just decided, I'm going to be influenced by this or influenced by that, and I'm going to go with this and go with that. But they fundamentally instruct their structure because of their purpose. And what he's saying here is a person without purpose, and a person that doesn't think about purpose and align themselves to purpose, ki efshar limalet min hamisa b'shum oifen, ki afil b'yeshav Mashiach v'meir v'meinu gam az yeh muchrach kol ha'adam lemois, k'moi she'amar Rabbeinu b'feirush afil Mashiach ve'atzma yamus, lo k'moi shechesh v'molem kshav v'Mashiach yispat memisa, ki lo kein hu. Says, if you think about it, we're all hefker. We're all disposable. Humanity, by definition, is disposable. At the end of the day, okay, you might be in use for, please God, a number of years, and a large number of them. But at the end of the day, you're hefker. You're ownerless. As important as you are, at the end of the day, you're going into the earth, Admei V'Esrim. And that's a realization that if you in your life don't have purpose, you return to the purposelessness. And that space is forever. That space is forever. And he says, even Mashiach, people don't realize this, Mashiach dies, he says. Mashiach comes, and he writes, even Mashiach dies. There's a period of time that Mashiach comes to fulfill a particular role, just before Olam Haba. And in that space, Mashiach dies after he fulfills his role.
Or maybe the Rebbe was the Mashiach.
Or maybe Yoshka was, God forbid. So, v'im kein, ma'acha she'efshar lemalek mezeh, v'az yeh oilam oirech lo'ilamoi, ada netzach netzochim, ha'yesh mufkar, gadol mezeh, sho'ilech achar, taives liboy, mafkir atzmei mechaim netzchim. So thus, he says, you have one way of essentially organizing that you are never purposeless. And that way is by aligning yourself with your infinite self. Aligning yourself with something called nitzchin, your endless life, your netzach, your ability to tap into ultimate purpose that is forever. שהפקרוס אין צריכים לעבודת השם יזרח, כי יכולים להיות איש קשה בלי הפקרוס. ואמר אף על פי שאצלי אין זה הפקרוס בכלל, כי אדרבה להפך הוא מופקר, היינו מי שאין מפקר עצמו בשביל השם, יספרח זהו מופקר באמס. Wow. Unbelievable. Sure. He says, do you know what it means to be aligned to infinite? Do you know what it means to be aligned to your purpose? It's taking the essence of hefkerus, taking the essence of chucking something out onto the street for everyone to take. Taking that essence, where we're saying humanity functions in this respect. You think about how people live their lives, doing their own subjective, personal aspects which are dictated by their desires, egos, and that's it, and then they die. I mean, what a sad form of existence. Now, he says the only way to counter that, again, it's not saying you shouldn't enjoy elements of this world and subjective experiences, but at the end of the day, if it's not governed or under the umbrella of purpose, then you have nothing. And what he's saying here is the way to do this is to be mafkir yourself to Hashem. What that means is you take yourself and say, I am hefker. I am ownerless. I don't own myself. I relinquish myself to God. That is my own. That is essentially, I let myself go to Hashem. I make myself hefker to Hashem. If I'm not hefker to Hashem, I'm hefker to the world. That's an unbelievable concept. Yeah? If I'm not hefker to Hashem, I'm hefker to the world. Ach, afa pikein, afilu ma shenikra etzel ha'olam hafkeres, gam ze ein tzruchem ki yocholim liyos ish kasha b'li hafkeres. Nimta shebemes ze she'eino hoylech b'darchi Hashem ze mufka be'emes, ki ein hafkeres gadol mezeh shemafker chaim nitzchim v'toiv amiti v'nitzchi b'shvil sha'a kala. Now, if you think about it, these people that throw the Dysons out onto the street, yeah? Gosh, like it's a gewaldige thing, a gewaldige thing. But they say to themselves, this has no substance to me, no relevance to me, no importance to me. Now imagine a person who comes along and says, you have the greatest energy possible to you. That's called your endlessness. That's called purpose. That's called being connected to infinite life. That's a pretty big thing. Now, if a person comes along and then says, you know what? Not so important. I much prefer going to the non-kosher Indian restaurant. I much prefer to, have to engage with this on Shabbos because at the end of the day, what's Shabbos? Not so important. I much more prefer to engage with a little bit extra sleep than coming to daven in a minyan. All of these statements of the self is essentially a person coming along and saying, I'm hefker. I don't have purpose. I am able to prioritize my own subjective purpose, which is eventually going to be disintegrated into the ground, over the essential purpose, which is endlessness. That's called being hefker. That's called I'm chucking more than a Dyson on the street. I'm chucking infinity and I'm chucking the ultimate space of who I am on the street. There's nothing bigger than hefker of that level. And that's why he says, Shul ketzel oiver. If you look, these things of this world, these small moments of pleasure or small moments of dopamine and small moments of whatever people get misguided by, they are like a passing shadow. They are of such inconsequential effect on your happiness and meaning and purpose. In comparison, they are nothing. But they have such a big consequence on your definition of being hefker or not hefker. The kol tanuga marovim beridus bekas v'yagen mechoyvois vein shum adam sheroidef achar oilam hazeh sheyeloi nachas v'tanug v'oilam hazeh ki kol yom of kas mechovois. He says any person that's connected to this world as their essence and as their focus, he says this world is filled with bitterness, with anger, with pain, and with suffering. And that individual that runs after this world thinking that it's going to give them this ultimate space of tranquility and pleasure and perfection and enjoyment is going to be deluded and is deluded into a space where they're constantly being let down and constantly experiencing these energies.
You see that amongst lefties a lot. They're very angry.
I hear that. As it says, Pagayim Tzarz v'Yisurim v'Daigos person in that space is going to be constantly in a space of worry, in a place of affliction, and in a place of bitterness, because that is what this world is. It's constant letdown. It's constant, I got this, but it's not enough. I got that, but it's not enough. I achieved this, but it's not enough. That constant not enough is really painful. Now, if a person is able to discover their innate enough, their innate endlessness, their innate purpose, not only does it transform what you're able to engage with in this world in a space where you're deeply, deeply in tune to your essence, but you also then are able to engage with this world externally in a much more vibrant way, where you aren't as affected by all of those letdowns in this world. So he concludes here by saying, Ein rega beloy pega. Ein rega beloy pega. Yeah, it's a nice... There's a nice quote here, catchphrase. I hope you take it upon this catchphrase. Ein rega, beloy pega. Ein shvua, ein shmita. Yeah, so ein rega, beloy pega. Gewaldig. There's no moment without affliction. Meaning, if you think every moment essentially has some form of discomfort, generally. Every moment has some form of discomfort. Not a perfect space in terms of one's egoic necessities. Every moment has some letdown. You know, you wanted 2 shots, you gave 1 shot this morning of coffee. You know, you wanted more water, we stopped you. You couldn't have more water. You know, whatever it was in a person's life, ein rega beloy pega. In fact, if you look at it, there's not one human being that actually has this world at all. Not one human being. No matter how much money you have, no matter how much you've succeeded, you ask that oak, do you feel like you have enough in your life? Do you feel like you've got enough? No. You see these oaks who, you know, they've got everything, and then there's a divorce, and then there's a affair, and then there's a this, and then there's a that. No one has the experience where they feel like they have enough in this world. There's always more to chase, and there's always more to do, because the ego, by definition, is never enough. So because of that, thus, if you think about it, there's no greater focus that a person should have than making themselves hefker for Hashem. No greater focus that a person should have to run after the true good, the true endless good, where a person is able to connect themselves to the endlessness of all existence, which is Hashem. Nimtza mi she'einu mekabel al atzmai ol Torah or mitzvahs hem b'chinas mufkar. Thus, we see like this: person who is not branded, so to speak, with the all of Torah, you don't take upon yourself the yoke of Torah. You don't say to yourself every day, even though I don't feel like it sometimes, I don't dedicate myself to that space of learning, of davening, of keeping the mitzvahs to my best abilities and continuing to grow in those abilities. If I don't have that dedication and that direction, then he says, I'm sorry to tell you, you're hefker. You are an ownerless entity that will eventually, like chaff in the wind, dissipate into the endlessness of existence, into nothingness. Not only that, everything has dominion over you. Everything. You can't hold yourself back. Everything has dominion over you. Dror, the Noam Hashem, El HaCherev, of Ferish Rashi, Sham Haneni Koire Lechem, Dror Mi'iti Sheino Adoin Lakol, Lachem, V'tu Hefker El HaCherev. So the Jewish people are referred to as this like free bird, but there's no owner, there's no entity, there's no aspect to this particular existence. and it's something that is just wafting around. That's essentially what he's saying is juxtaposed here. And that's essentially what transpired with the destruction of the temple. Hashem said, and the big question was, how, God, could you allow this temple of yours to be destroyed? I mean, fine, the Jewish people are messed up, but your temple, I mean, it's your home. Like, surely you should stand up for yourself and show people that you have dominion in this world. And Hashem was saying no. Hashem was saying, when you make yourself hefker to the world, I'll show you. I'll make the temple hefker for the Zarim, for the nations of the world. They'll come in, they'll burn it, they'll trample it, they'll treat you like your hefker. And if you think about today, look at how society treats the Jewish people. They treat them like they're hefker. You see what's transpired in the murder of those two Israelis in Israel. Hefker, like water's more expensive probably than the blood of a Jew. Because the question we have to ask ourselves is, what is our purpose? And if we have no purpose, parenthetically, those two individuals, by the way, that were killed were followers of Yoshka, for the information. Yeah, they were the ones in DC. Yeah, they're followers of Jesus. You know,
the guy was not even Jewish. His mother isn't Jewish.
So he wasn't okay. But nevertheless, any individual that was killed and any individual ever that's killed is always a unbelievable loss, especially when it is motivated by. I mean, there's no especially. Any murder is obviously evil. But understandably, what we have to understand, in our space is, have we made ourselves hefker? And who have we made ourselves hefker? You only got two options. Either you're hefker la'Hashem, either you make yourself completely ownerless to God, or you make yourself ownerless to the world and everything else tramples over you. Those are your only two options. עד שיש לו תבוא ידי זרם, כי קודם קבלת התורה וכן שהעז ומס התורה, חס ושלום אין מקיים ממויסר, חס ושלום. אז העולם חס ושלום בבחינת הפקר. כי עיקר קיום העולם הוא על ידי התורה. וישראל זכו בכל העולם ממלאו על ידי קבלת התורה, בשביל זה קיבלו ישראל את התורה במדבר. כי מדבר הוא מקום הפקר. להוירא שישראל זכו בכל העולם מן ההפקר על ידי התורה. כי קודם קבלת התורה, הכל נחשב במדבר שהוא הפקר. So that's why someone asks you, why, out of all the environments, did Hashem give us the Torah in the desert? Now you can answer them. You can say the desert is the ultimate place. It's paradigmatic of being hefker, of being ownerless. There's nothing that is owned in that space. And because of that, you have a question when it comes to the Torah. The Torah is your hinge on which everything is anchored. And that is, are you making yourself hefker to Hashem? If not, you are hefker lahem. You are hefker to the world, and you are hefker to the constant letdown of the world. So please God, we should see a blessing in our lives with the Kabbalah Torah, that we are going to be given the opportunity to accept upon ourselves not to be hefker anymore, to be able to say we have dedication, discipline, and strength to be able to make decisions in our lives that allow us to be branded with hefker la Hashem, that we are ownerless to God. What an unbelievable space, because in that you discover your endlessness and you discover your ultimate self, and that is the ultimate revelation.
As I read,